Hello guys, welcome to Cognitive Hub VBA tutorials. In today's video, I am going to discuss about the VBA Object Model. Now without wasting any time, let's dive into the topic. And this is the object model that I am going to discuss today. Basically, it is a 4-layer object model, and starting with the application object and followed by the workbook objects, and followed by the worksheet objects, and followed by the range objects. These are the main 4 layers that we have in the object model, and the last basic unit is cell unit, which is nothing but a basic one cell in one sheet or one workbook. And why I mentioned here in the last as a 5th layer is the cell will be having access to all the objects. Every object can be able to access that particular cell, which I am going to explain in a couple of minutes later with the help of a spreadsheet. And first of all, let us see about what is meant by application object. Application object is nothing but a main default object in VBA. This object is always an assumed object, like it doesn't matter whether you explicitly included it in your code or not. If you want, then you can mention it. If you don't want it, then there will be no problem in the execution of macro code. Basically what happens is, when working with the macros itself, it is assumed that you are going to working with the Excel sheet. In other words, what Excel will assume, like that you are working with the application object. So by default, when we are working with the macros itself, both Excel as well as application object will think that I am going to working with the Excel sheet, and Excel will assume that I am going to working with the application object. That is what application object means. That's why if you want to mention explicitly in your code, it doesn't matter, you can mention it, or if you don't want, then you can also mention it. Generally what I wrote in all the next lectures means, I do not mention application object as explicitly. I mentioned only the workbook or worksheet objects directly. And next one is workbook objects. It is also one type of default object, means every VBA editor will be having some panel in the left side, which will illustrate all the sheets that we are having access, as well as all the modules that we are writing. Like if you are creating some separate module for some procedure, then you will be having some separate module in the left side panel as well. So what it means is, for every workbook that you have, like if you are working on some workbook named book 1, then for every workbook there will be a separate section on the left panel. So until you are writing the code to access every sheet in that particular workbook, then there will be no need of writing any workbook. If you want to go to another workbook, like if you are writing a macro code in book 1, if you want to access the book 2, then you need to write the workbook objects. That is why it is called a somewhat default, but in some cases you need to write the workbook object, otherwise it won't execute right. So, and the next one is worksheet objects. Worksheet object is nothing but in every worksheet, in every workbook, we can able to create one or more worksheets, right? So for every worksheets, if you want to do some transformation operations, as well as if you want to do some copying operations or updating operations, then you can easily do with the help of a worksheet objects and range objects. And for a worksheet object and range objects, I already specially created a separate videos for range objects as well as worksheet objects, to illustrating every methods that it have, and what are the main common methods that most of the people are using in their projects and all. And I already mentioned cell is nothing but a basic unit. So now I am going to discuss all these objects with the help of some spreadsheet with the example. So let's look into it. I am removing this previous code here. So I already created one spreadsheet having the values in A1 as well as A2 column values here, and I already inserted a command button here, and I already assigned a macro to it. If you are not done these steps, you can go ahead with the above lectures on how to enable the developer options and how to assign a macro to it. So once you are done with those, then I have entered into VBA editor. As I already told you that previously the left side panel, and this is the panel that we have previously, and this is the module 1 that I am writing here. So this module 1 is under the book1.xlsx. So until I am accessing the objects in like worksheets in this book 1, there will be no problem. And if I want to access the workbook sheets in other page, then I need to include that workbook of book2.xlsx, whatever the name that it has. So until I am using this worksheet, the workbook object is also act as a default object for it. So first of all, what I am going to do is I want to illustrate you with the first of all I want to activate the workbook. So for that, what I am doing is application objects, which is a default object. So by clicking dot itself, these are all the properties that it have, like activate printer, active window. If your system is connected to printer and if you want to print that whatever the output, then you can write the code for active printer as well. And what I am doing here is I am creating a workbook here, like not a creating, I am just writing a workbook object. To if you write like application.workbooks, what it will do is it will activate every workbooks.activate, then it will activate every workbook that which are currently open. But what I am doing is I am currently activating only this workbook dot activate. This is the function that we have, like not a function, that is the method that we have for workbook. So what it happens is it will activating the workbook naming book1.xlsx. So I am saving it, so it is successfully saved, and I am running it. So it is successfully activated. So it will also executes fine if we do not mention the application object here. So I am saving it, so it is same, it is running fine. So what I am doing is I am including the worksheet application object here just for our convenience. And then what I am doing is I am going to print the workbook name, like application dot workbooks of book 1. So if I want the current path of this workbook, so what I am having is I am writing the path here. So these are all the properties that it have for the workbook. So I am writing path. So I also want to print this, so I am directly printing it in the message box. And similarly, what I want is I also want the application, like the complete full name. So wait, I will let you know what is the output of the above code. So I am running it. See, this is the part of that particular workbook, like book1.xlsx. So till now what it happens is it will print the output as till that particular directory. It won't print the file name as file name. If you want the file name, then you need to write it like message box space application as a object dot workbook space book1, so book1.xlsx dot full name. So this is also one another property for workbook. So what I am doing is I am running it. So the first one is path name and the second one is full name, because it also includes the book name also along with the extension. That is the difference between the path and full name in workbook objects. So that is how we have. And if you want to explore more properties, then you can put the dot here and then see these are the separate properties. One is activate and active chart and active sheet, everything. There are a lot of functionalities here. If you are free and then want to know about every individual property is having a separate functionality here. You can do it by your own. For now I am just explaining all these things for our understanding and how these objects will work. So I am removing the last two statements, and what I am doing is now I think I am done with the application as well as workbook objects. Now I am going to worksheet objects now. So let us see whether the application dot workbooks of book 1 dot x plus x dot. So what I am doing is I am writing the worksheet objects. As these are all hierarchical models, like the first step is application and then workbook and then worksheet. So the order will be like first of all application and then workbook and then worksheet, and then if you want to access the range, then you can mention the range just after the worksheet. If you cannot write the range object after the workbook without having a worksheet objects. So if you write this, then you will be getting an error here. Every time you will be following the hierarchy. So I am writing the sheet 1 because the sheet name itself is sheet 1. I haven't modified it. If you have multiple sheets, then it is mandatory to mention the sheet name here inside the worksheet worksheet object. And then what I am doing is I am just mentioning the range. So without the range, just mention I want to print the contents of the cells 1, 1, which is nothing but the dot value is nothing but to print the values here. Let us see what is the output of it. Cell 1 to cell 1, 1 is nothing but a first row first column value. So what I am going to print here is I am clicking. See here I mentioned 1, 1. So first row first column. So the value is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is what it printed. So 1, 2, 3, 4, fine. So similarly you can also mention. See, I already told you cell is nothing but we can access from anywhere, like from worksheets or workbooks, as well as from range also. See, what I am mentioning is I am mentioning the range object, range of suppose A2 dot value. So I am printing this A2 value here. A2 is nothing but the field, the cell name. Instead of mentioning it as a 2, 1, I am mentioning it as a A2 because for everything we will be having a separate name here, A2 as A2 here for this value. So I am printing this A2 value. See, 1, 2, 3 is the value in the A2, so the output is 1, 2, 3. So that is how the range object will work. So if you remove this worksheet object and writing the range object directly, it will throw out some error. I am running here. See, directly it will asking for the workbook and it will ask for running object, right? So it will show some error. Object doesn't support this property or method. So that is what the error that we have in if you are directly accessing if you are removing the one layer and directly accessing the other layer. So that is how the hierarchy in VBA works. So I am modifying it with the worksheets and sheet 1 dot range. So similarly the range you can also mention here with the help of I am just removing this, and this command will also work without having a work application and workbook objects. Let me show you. So this is the same function, right? Worksheets of sheet 1 dot range. So here I already told you that I am accessing the sheet which is present in this particular workbook. So it is not necessary to mention the workbook explicitly. By default it will take it as a automatic, by default it will take it as a object of workbook of book 1. So I am running it. So it will execute it properly and showing the output as 1, 2, 3. So that is what application object is a default one, and workbook object because is also a default one because we are accessing the sheet which is present in that particular book itself, particular VBA project. So similarly you can also mention range of 2 dot value. See, here also we got a 1, 2, 3 because what happens is here we are having only sheet 1 and here we are having only sheet 1 here. If you are having multiple sheets and you are having a data in every sheet, then it might show you some error. or by default it will be having, by default it will take the sheet 1 as the active worksheet. So that is how range will work. And if you want to print from A1 to A2, if you want to print say suppose if you want to select the A1 to A3 statements and write the property as select, I am writing here, I am just selecting select. It is also one of the property. So what it will do is it will just select all the range columns from A1 through A3. So let's go to spreadsheet. So initially the cell here is below the button 1. Once I click it, then it will show from A1 to A3. See, the select operator, the select method will select the values from A1 to A3. That is how the range will work. Here the range is also working without the help of the worksheet and workbook objects, because I already told you that here the sheet 1 is only present in VBA project. If you are having multiple sheets in the VBA project, then it is necessary to mention what is the sheet that you are going to work. So this is how the range object will work. So thank you guys, that's all for this video.